is that? That's just on wireless, is it?
It's the PAL. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to those tuning in. My name is Raquel and I'm your Vice President for Health Education, Science and Technology here at Middlesex University Students' Union. I'm thrilled to be joined by our Vice-Chancellor of Middlesex University, Professor Tim Blackman. Welcome, Tim, to our PAL Media room at our Students' Union. First of all, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Raquel. Yeah, a bit cold, but warming up.
I wanted to start by saying a big thank you to you for joining us today and for agreeing to take part in this Q&A. I think it's really important that students get to hear from you directly on issues that affect them, and generally get to know you a bit more about the person who is leading the university. During this afternoon, this is how it's going to run. So we have a large number of questions submitted by our students over the last few weeks, and we are going to fill them to Tim over the next hour. However, we are planning on taking a couple of questions from the live feed. So if you want to ask any questions, feel free to, and then we are going to take them from the live here. So yeah, we have a wide range of interesting topics to cover. We have structured them into academia, welfare and university facilities. Are you ready to make a start?
I think so, as ready as I will be.
Yeah. So the first topic is academics. Let's start with a few questions that students have about their students here, their studies here at Middlesex. And for you students, if you have any question that you want to ask about academics, your student experience here at Middlesex, feel free to just ask them in the live feed. Thank you. So first question. The first question is about feedback. This has been in constant discussion at many program voice groups, and more specifically around the turnaround time and quality of responses. How do you measure what is quality feedback through formative and summative assessments?
Okay. Well, first of all, Raquel, thank you very much for inviting me along, and I'm really looking forward to this, and it's a great opportunity to talk to our students and to hear more about our students' concerns. And I think, as you know, we make every effort to let our students have a voice, and we listen carefully to students' views and always try to act on good ideas and insights into how we can continue to improve. So assessment. Thinking through how we use assessment is tremendously important. It's something we call assessment literacy. It's understanding what the role of assessment is in a university education. And as you've said, we have formative assessment, which is about giving feedback about how students can improve, what they're doing well, what they're not doing so well. And then the summative assessment, which is about coming to a final judgment, if you like, about how well the students achieved against the learning outcomes for their module in their course. So the first point to make is it's really important to look at the programme handbook and see how the approach to assessment has been thought through by the programme team, and therefore for the students studying the module and the programme to understand how assessment works for that particular part of their course. We do operate to standards. We operate to a guideline that feedback is within 15 days unless the head of department makes particular provision that there's a good reason why it's going to be delayed. We also have guidance about how assessment has to be aligned with the learning outcomes, and how assessment needs to be used to make sure that all aspects of the course and the student experience on the course are being properly fed back, and to help students to improve and to come to, as I say, final judgment about how it works. We're increasingly using different types of assessment, so in courses that are becoming much more competency-based, for example, where students are actually demonstrating in class what they know and what they can do. So it's almost a continuous assessment in the classroom, in the lab, in the studio. We're using different kinds of assessment in terms of not just essays, but also posters, obviously projects, practical work, so that the different skills that students have and different knowledge that they are acquiring through their course are being assessed properly as well. So I think the important thing is that look at the programme handbook, see what the guidance is, and think that through. Talk to your lecturer. It's absolutely fine to talk to your lecturer and ask, how is assessment working? What do I need to do to improve?
And you mentioned the 15 days rule, so it's now a rule to all academic courses that they need. Okay, this is really good because we always have some students complaining about time in terms of feedback,
sure,
and they don't really know clearly the rules. And second, thank you for your answer. Second question, it's about learning resources. So there is a strong focus on improving the innovative ways in which students learn, with the great work of the Learning Landscape Committee. Students have spoken about the need for further online resources, such as seminar tutorial slides being made available, but also through recording lectures across the university. What innovative practices and resources do you envisage your staff using over the coming years?
I think, well, first of all, the student input to the Learning Landscape project has been really important, and we've really valued that part of thinking through how we can transform all our teaching and learning spaces into 21st century learning environments. And that's about learning that's active, not passive, collaborative, interactive. And I hope you'll see around the campus not just new buildings like the Ritterman, but our older buildings are being refurbished and converted to enable that kind of teaching, which is a really important commitment in the new university strategy. And I think something that's very distinctive about Middlesex, our commitment to practice-based learning and really developing in our students not just knowledge of their subjects and professional fields, but also the skills to actually put that knowledge into practice. Lecture capture is getting more and more common, and more lecturers are using that, but I think the really important point is that it's all the resources that are on the VLE, the My University site, our virtual learning environment. So increasingly, My Learning is becoming better and better in terms of the range of resources that are available there to support students' learning, and not just the resources that are on the website, but also links to other resources that are relevant to the course, and supporting students to actually learn at their own pace in terms of catching up, exploring the subject further through those links. So there's much more to it than just having recordings of lectures. It's making sure that each module is supported on the virtual learning environment with a whole host of support materials. And that's a priority for us, to make sure that every module is really well supported with those resources.
But this is this keeps coming as one of the questions that in our student leaders conference, and some students feel that they need more than the others. Recording lectures across the university. Do you think it will be possible for every course to have that at least in a short term?
So more and more, and my aspiration would be that that's the case. But I think the important point is that the learning resources have to be more than just recordings of the lectures.
Yeah.
It's making sure that the module is supported with a range of resources on the website for that module.
Thank you. The next one is about growth, the growth building. For years, students from the arts and creative industries have campaigned for a 24-hour growth access. What commitments can you make to ensure that students will be able to gain further access to these fantastic facilities that they love using out of the normal hours? Yeah,
I suppose the first point to make about that, Raquel, is that the university is a complex place, and you know, I'm not in charge of everything, and ultimately I'm responsible for the decisions made, but we delegate decisions to many parts of the university where colleagues are in a better position to make these decisions. So the use of the Grove is very much a matter that's with Caroline Upton, the Executive Dean of that faculty. We discuss matters like that together, but she's in a much better position to understand the balance we have to strike in terms of access to all our buildings. So In the Grove, there are particular considerations in terms of health and safety. There's some expensive equipment in there. There's some potential dangerous areas if you're not careful. So we have to make sure that all of that is getting proper attention. So having said that, I mean, the building's open, of course, till 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at the moment. We're piloting opening part of it for the music students 24 hours to understand what the demand is and therefore what kind of, for example, security cover there needs to be over that period, because this all costs money and that comes from student fees. And we're currently looking at the usage that's made right through the day and the night. The question, I guess, is in terms of even considerations like student welfare, you know, is it going to be open right through the night? Do we want to encourage, you know, the night shift? But on the other hand, we understand that students do study at different times. And I think when the pilot's been considered, I wouldn't be surprised if we look at extending the hours.
Yeah.
But we have to strike the right balance in terms of all the factors that need to be taken into account.
Yeah, in terms of, I think it's a really good point, but I think in terms of the point of student welfare, when we have the library 24 hours, we are not encouraging them to stay 24 hours there.
Yeah.
We're not encouraging them to stay the night. We're just giving them the opportunity. If they want to stay the night and do their work, they can.
That's
and
right.
the same would be to the Grove, because as you said, some students have prefer to work during the day, and some others prefer to study during the night.
Yeah. We've heard that message loud and clear.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you, and I hope the 24-hour Grove comes soon. Comes at last. There's no. But yeah, next question is about placements. We know placements are a hugely important part of some student university experience. Some students have as part of their course compulsory, other students decide to take just a gap year to do their placement, a gap placement year. So what support are students getting whilst away from campus on placement, and will you be able to ensure that the student experience away from Middlesex will continue to be first rate for these students?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because placements and internships are going to become more and more a feature of our courses. We know the value that placements and internships have, particularly for when you come to pitch for that all-important first graduate job. Having that experience in the industry, in the profession, is vitally important, and in the community as well. Very grateful to what the Student Union does in terms of the community placement provision, which I think is a fantastic addition to what the university offers. Obviously, if the placement is part of the programme, then there are well thought through arrangements. There'll be a supervisor from the department who would have visited the placement provider, checked it out, make sure there's appropriate support there in terms of the learning outcomes on the programme. And then there'll be a supervisor in the placement provider organisation as well, so the two will work together. There'll be placement visits by the academic supervisor to talk to the student, check it's all going well, touch base with the supervisor who's in the placement provider as well. So I think those arrangements are pretty robust, where the placement is built in and is part of the programme, and how it's delivered and assessed and so on. Placements that aren't part of the programme, that's slightly different. So there'll be support, for example, through the employability service, where many of those placements are accessed, and the employability service will provide advice about the placement. They'll check the placement provider out, and they'll also be available to the student during the placement to answer any queries, address any concerns. And I think a particularly important point is that when the student comes back from the placement, they can go and talk to the employability service about how to reflect on and use what they've learned, particularly in adding it to their CV, using it in job applications and so on.
Mm-hmm. About the courses that already have their placement in compulsory for their course. I had some complaints from students about how far away their placement is, and like the travel distance ends up being way more than they expected. How does the university balance in terms of how far the placements are and how happy the students are with their placement?
Yeah. So I can understand that, and this is a case of getting the balance right. I mean, obviously the most important consideration is that the placement experience is a really sort of top-class experience in terms of benefiting the student. And I guess where you've got a trade-off between distance and making sure the placement is something that really adds value for the student. It's adding value for the student that will come first. But the important thing is that where these issues exist is to raise it with your student voice leader or with a member of staff, and that will get listened to. And if there needs to be, if it's a case of hardship, there's funds in the university to help with that. But I think where this is a significant issue, it's talking to your lecturer, to your student voice leader, and working through it, because that will get heard. But there is this balance to strike between getting really good high quality placements and making sure that they're all in reasonable travelling distance.
Yeah, that's all for placements. Just one more question in terms of academics. So students, if you still haven't submitted your questions, please do, so we can have more questions about academics.
Don't make them too hard.
Yeah. The next question is about general employability. So going from placement to employability, what work are you doing to ensure that students are able to work during their studies?
Yeah.
But also, what is the university doing in terms of after they graduate? So this is
a
the thing that worries most of the students, because it's all really good to do your course and those 3 years or more, depends on your course. But then once you graduate, what is the university doing to help those find a job? Or
so finding a graduate job is our number one priority. That's what we're very much about at Middlesex, is recruiting students from a diverse range of backgrounds, and as well as giving them a great time and experience while they're at university, is making sure that they're really equipped with the knowledge, skills and capabilities to get a rewarding graduate level job. Now, to go to the first part of your question, that's basically part-time work while you're studying, and that's a big priority for us because we understand all the financial pressures on our students these days. So recognising that part-time employment is part of the deal is something that we are working with and helping with. So for instance, through Unitemps, you'll find a whole host of part-time job opportunities within the university. We've made a real commitment to make as many part-time jobs available as possible for our students as student ambassadors, as helpers with various events, all the kind of red t-shirt activities. So student learning assistants, of course, is another great opportunity to find a part-time job with the university and get something really meaningful on your CV. So there's a real commitment to make jobs available internally, and you can look for those through Unitemps. Unitemps is also, of course, expanding to include part-time job opportunities right across the Barnet local economy with local businesses, public services. So it's opening up beyond just university opportunities. Sorry
to interrupt, just on this one. About the part-time jobs, one of the things that I get from students a lot is that we know that the university has a lot of jobs. Here in the SU we have a lot of jobs as well.
Sure.
It's just, I think it's about getting those part-time jobs about their course. So for example, I studied psychology before, having a part-time job, going to Unitemps or going to MDX jobs or works, and have an offer of part-time jobs in my area. I think this is one of the things that students really need, because I know there's a lot of offers for them to earn some money, especially in London.
Sure.
But also I think students are looking into having a part-time relatable to their course.
Sure. And that's, I mean, where that's built in as a paid placement, for example, that's integral, and more of our programs, not just in a sense the usual suspects like nursing and teaching and so on, but more of our programs have got those paid placements built into them that are by definition relevant to the learning outcomes on the course. It's a case of search. I mean, we've got a lot of placements. We've got more placements available than students to fill them. So it is about searching through and finding that match, taking advice from the employability service, from your lecturers on your programme to find that right match, because it may not be immediately obvious, and many of these opportunities are about actually developing your soft skills, your teamwork skills, communication skills, problem solving skills. They may not be directly in the specialist area of your degree, but that may be true of your future career anyway. We're always working to source placements and to get them as relevant as possible to what our students are looking for. Recently, for example, we had a visit from the Ministry of Justice, who are particularly interested in recruiting our graduates because they're trying to diversify their recruitment across the 80,000 jobs that they have in the Ministry of Justice. And on the back of that, they are offering just Middlesex placements in the Ministry of Justice that we're working with them on to make sure that they are just the right opportunity, especially for students who are looking towards those kind of careers in those areas. But can I come on to what happens when you graduate? Because that is terrifically important for us. We've got a well-resourced employability service here at Middlesex, so there's a range of support there, from sourcing job opportunities to getting advice about how to get your CV looking as persuasive as possible, the opportunity to do mock and dummy interviews, really hone your interview skills. So all that's available through the employability service. MDX Works, of course, is a job agency, so that you can look for jobs there. You can talk to an employability advisor about how to carry out your search. So we put terrific priority in making sure that our employability service is as good as it possibly can be. And of course, that employability service at Middlesex is with you for life. So for as long as you want after you graduate, you can come back either online or face-to-face and get that employability advice. The other really important priority is to make sure that our programmes themselves have got what we know employers are looking for embedded in the programme. So this is specialist knowledge that you need, particularly if you're doing a more vocationally orientated programme, but it's also about what I mentioned earlier on, the soft skills, making sure that the skills that employers are looking for around things like teamwork, communication, problem solving, that those are built into the programme. There's opportunities for our students to really practice those skills and get them really, really as honed as they possibly can be. And we've now looked across the whole curriculum at Middlesex to say, have we got those graduate attributes built into the programme? Are they being assessed? Back to your first question. And I'm pleased to say that that work has been largely completed, and we can now say that we've got these key graduate attributes that we've talked to employers about embedded right across the curriculum.
It's really good, thank you. Do we have any live questions?
Yeah, the next section.
And the next, okay, good. And so the next one is about welfare. The recent discussion of mental health has not just dominated the university sector, but is talked in all walks of life and has sparked debate and action across the generations. The first question is about mental health. What is the university doing to meet the increasing demands of mental health provision on campus?
Okay, this is a challenging area. We all know that right across the sector, it's not just Middlesex, mental health issues are more common than they used to be. It's partly about a level of awareness now that didn't exist so much in the past. There's not the same, thankfully, stigma around actually talking about mental health issues. The first point I'd like to make is that mental health is everybody's business. You know, it's very common for people to have an episode of mental health challenges at some point in their life. So it's not something that just happens to a small minority of people. And it's also something that's about the community that we have in the university. So mental health at a general level is supported through a community that's inclusive, welcoming, where we all look out for each other. So friendships, we put a lot of emphasis, for example, during the Welcome Month to encourage our new students to make friends. You know, one of the best predictors of whether a student's going to actually stay with us for that first year, in particular that critical first year, is whether they make a friend in that first month. So we need to help that in terms of relationships and networks, and making sure that as a community we are supportive and inclusive and looking out for each other. So it's a responsibility that we all have. But when there's that extra level of support that's needed, we need to make sure those services are there. Obviously at one level, it's the job of the National Health Service to provide these services for the whole population, but we know at Middlesex that we need to supplement those services with our own provision. And we've put quite a lot of additional resource into that area over the last 2 years in particular. So we've increased the number of counsellors who are available, we've shortened the waiting times, we've now for the first time got a psychologist that's offering cognitive behavioural therapy for students who particularly need that kind of support. And we've supplemented those face-to-face services with online resources as well, so that there's evidence that actually good online resources can be really helpful in terms of helping you to manage a particular challenging time in your life, or a particularly stressful time coming up to exams, assessments, for example. We know that we also need to provide more supportive type provision, like opportunities for sort of group therapy. We're developing that garden by the bungalow where the wellbeing service is based, so that we can provide opportunities there to just work in groups, talk things through at particularly stressful times in the university year. And we've also introduced just recently drop-in services as well. So obviously there's the case of you want some counselling support, you book it, you wait for your turn to come round. If it's urgent, you'll be seen much quicker, of course, if you're at risk. But there's also now the opportunity to go along during the drop-in times. So that's much quicker, on tap. So we've increased the number of counsellors, we've introduced more online resources, and we've introduced things like the drop-in provision, as well as particular events around mindfulness and so on, using, for example, that beautiful garden that's being developed by the bungalow.
Yeah, I think different students have different approaches to mental health. And here in the Students' Union, we even divided it. We have like the counselling part and everything, but also the other part, which is all about the students who have who think that they don't need to go to counselling, or they might feel, oh, I'm not that stressed. So it was all about having de-stress activities. Is the university doing anything at the moment that is not? I mean, there is a lot of new counselling, new things, but is the university doing anything in order to prevent students to get to that state? So
yeah. So wellbeing services in particular, rollouts is general stress reduction sessions that I've mentioned already, and we will be doing more of that. I'm personally interested in this whole mindfulness thing, which, as I understand it, is about being more reflective and learning how to meditate and actually be more in control in terms of your priorities at a particular time, getting life into perspective, and we will be doing more of that and supplementing what we're already doing.
Mm-hmm. Just on this mental health bit, I recently read an article about saying that every time a student experiences some kind of stress, not most of the times, the first person they seek to is their friends or family, but also their academics. Yes. Is the university doing anything? I know there's the academic advisor scheme, but that's just for first years. Yeah. Are the academics trained in case something comes up, or in case a student tells them something? Is the university doing something about it in terms to train academics, not to have counselling with them, but if a student comes to you, exactly.
Yeah. So the academic advisor scheme will be rolled out to all years in due course. So it's just the first phase, this first year. And you're right, we do see the academic advisor scheme as absolutely key, not just in supporting the academic progress of the student, but actually knowing where to refer and to follow that through when, for example, there's a mental health issue or other difficulty not directly connected with the course that needs that advice. And all our academics have access to advice and training to support them with that. But around the academic advice initiative in particular, we're making sure that there is that guidance and information available to academic advisors to be that sort of one-stop shop, that single port of call, because you can't easily divide things up in a student's life between academic matters and other personal or health matters. So our academics need to know where to refer to, and we need to make sure that the services that are available to pick up that referral.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because if a student goes to an academic and then something goes wrong, it's all about preventing that situation and doing something.
Yeah, and it's the same for the staff we have working in our student support services, obviously, as well. We
exactly.
go into the library and they'll be able to refer and follow that through.
The next one, it's about extracurricular activities. So thousands of students take part in extracurricular activities. We know how beneficial these are in terms of student experience at university. I have a personal question. Right. During your time studying at your university, did you ever take part in any clubs, societies, or any other extracurricular activity? Yeah.
Too many. Which I think you'll know that problem is that sometimes this kind of thing can take over your life a bit, but I thoroughly enjoyed my kind of extracurricular time when I was an undergraduate student. I spent a lot of time working in our student community action organisation. I was at Durham University. There was an organisation there called Focus, F-O-L-K-U-S, which was a joint community action group between students and local people. So it brought local people and students together to run projects ranging from adult literacy classes for people who needed a bit of help with developing their literacy and numeracy, actually, horse riding for disabled people, legal advice. We used to run a community newspaper as well, and we used to go out and run adventure playground projects on local housing estates. So we did loads of things, plus fundraising. I don't recommend this, but during my final year I organised a huge sort of fundraising walk with other friends working with this group, community action group at the time, that distracted me a little bit from my academic studies. But so you have to strike the balance. But in many ways, I learnt more from those sorts of activities than from my classes, although the classes are important, and I'm not saying not, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. But, and what I learned was, in many ways, complemented what I was learning in class, which is how it should work. So I learned to manage my time, I learned how to lay out a community newspaper, I learned how to lobby local councillors, I learned how to persuade academics in the law department to give their time freely to help run a legal advice centre for the local community. I thoroughly recommend everybody to get involved in extracurricular activities, and it's something that we are giving a lot of priority to in Middlesex.
So yeah, about this, we have many students, unfortunately, that are unable to take part in these extracurricular activities, either to the cost or time restrictions. Yeah. Should the university be doing more to allow time for students to participate in activities, and also these activities be included as part of the tuition fee? As you said before, this is a great part of a student experience, and it can help you in the future once you graduate and everything. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's important that students put in the hours that they need to in terms of doing well on their course. So that's really comes first, is making sure that you are putting in the study time that you need to do as well as you possibly can on your course. We provide our co-curricular activities here free. We fund the student union almost £1 million a year to help run clubs and societies. We put about £1/3 subsidy into sport, and there's many other examples. The language and cultural exchange, which is going really, really well now. I think there's heading for 500 students getting involved in that. That's provided free, all the organisation and so on. So we don't make money out of providing extracurricular activities. It's the student fee being recycled into providing these opportunities and thinking through what are the right opportunities, but also handing a lot of that decision making over to the student union. You decide what's right in terms of the clubs and societies you support.
Yeah, but for example, I know this because when I was a student, this was one of the reasons why I didn't join one of the clubs. Wednesday's free. It's one of the things that students still ask in our student leaders conference. It was one of the things that last year students really thought it was moving through, but then this year nothing happened. Can you make any comments about the Wednesdays afternoon free?
Yeah. Because
if you don't have the Wednesday afternoon free, then if you join any sports, then you can't really compete on Wednesday, which is the main goal of joining a team.
Look, if I had a magic wand, I'd make Wednesday afternoon free. You know, I personally think it's the right thing to do, to have Wednesday afternoon free for getting involved in sport, volunteering, clubs and societies, student union activities, etc. But we've got huge constraints around the timetable, and this is a more complicated task than I ever imagined it when I first arrived almost 3 years ago. Because there's trade-offs in terms of timetabling. We try not to spread the teaching too much across the whole week. Students want to try and have their teaching bunched together as much as possible across 3 at most 4 days. We don't always deliver that. But if we clear Wednesday afternoons, that's going to become much harder, and students will find their timetable spread much more across the week. So there's a trade-off there. And there are other constraints we have as well in terms of space. So we have quite limited space in some areas, like large lecture theatres in Middlesex. It's not easy to just magic those up over even a year. It takes a lot of planning. We've got that planning in the pipeline to relieve the space pressures that will enable us to flex the timetable a bit more. But the main constraint is that if we free up Wednesday afternoon, it will spread the teaching over the rest of the week, and we'd probably need a longer teaching year as well to do that. And that introduces all sorts of complications. So it remains a long-term aspiration to try and free up Wednesday afternoon. It's one of the factors in the work that we're doing on timetabling at the moment. We've got consultants in the university now actually helping us to crack this issue once and for all, but it's going to take time, and there are trade-offs. There's not a way of delivering for everybody, because if we were able to do that, we'd probably need to expand the campus size 3 times and hire more academics to teach, etc., etc. So it's getting those trade-offs right, but we know we haven't got it right at the moment. And we know there's work that needs to be done, and we will be working through it. We're onto it at the moment.
Okay. Oh, should I just... yeah, the next question is about security. This has been a huge topic as well. Yeah. There's been a number of high-profile security issues on campus over the last few years. What has been done to make the campus safer and combat the perception of Middlesex University as an unsafe place to study?
Well, I hope there isn't that perception out there that we're an unsafe place to study. It's a pretty safe campus overall, actually. It's an open campus, though. It's permeable to the community, and that's the right thing. I believe that's the right thing. We do not want to put security barriers up right around the campus and make it purely a student zone. I think it is a student campus, but members of the public can come in, and I think that's right. We're a community university. We don't want to turn our back on the local community. But that does introduce security risks. So we put a lot of resource into making sure that there's CCT coverage across the campus. We can always improve that, and we have been improving it, often with input from our students. We've done things like improve lighting, improve access on the campus. So we are constantly trying to improve. We're also committed to continuing to train and develop our security staff so that their responses are as good as they possibly can be. But they're not police officers, they don't have powers of arrest and so on. But it's important that they are properly trained, and we're committed to doing that. And I think on the whole, our security responses are pretty good, actually. I also need to emphasise, I think, that again, rather like mental health, this is everybody's business. We all should look out for things on the campus We should all be ready to report things. If we think something's wrong, go to security, tell them. So it isn't a case of just walking by, but if we see something that we're worried about or witness something that we shouldn't be witnessing, then report it.
Since we only have around 10 minutes, I'm just going through to the one out. Next, we are going into resources and facilities. One of the questions that this has been going on ever since I started studying here, so 3 years ago, about catering, about charcoals.
I wonder when catering would come up.
Yeah. So one of the biggest issues that students are always complaining on campus is the cost of food. With the current catering contract almost up, will the university focus on lowering the cost of food and drinks, increasing the range of the range in respect to dietary requirements, and listen to the wants and needs of students first, once for once?
Yes. Well, students first is a very important value for me, and catering comes up quite a lot in conversations with our students. The current contract obviously ends in 2019, and we're looking at the moment to how we're going to re-tender that, and the Students' Union is represented on the steering group that's overseeing that process, and we're very grateful for that input. I think currently catering is not just a question of cost. We try and keep the cost as low as possible. We actually subsidise catering on the campus. Our caterers get their facilities free of charge. They don't have to pay for energy, the space, etc. So that's a subsidy from the university that helps keep the prices low. But equally, there's another factor to take into account, and that's that, well, I know the Student Union lobbied me hard when I was appointed to introduce the London living wage, and we are a living wage employer, and we did extend that to our contractors. So they have to pay and are committed to paying decent salaries for their staff. So the more you drive down the price of a cup of coffee, obviously the more staff costs come into focus. But we're all committed to making sure that we've got a living wage caterer on the campus. There are also operational issues on the campus about how, to the extent to which we can provide outlets in terms of just physical facilities, health and safety concerns, etc. So it's quite a complex task in terms of what a caterer needs to do to operate on the campus. But we're listening. The Students' Unions have have got a direct input. We know that prices are an issue. You know, students don't have a lot of money these days. We know that the variety of food, its cultural acceptability is important, but equally we know some students just want cheap prices while other students want sort of branded food. So again, it's getting that mix.
I think
right.
Most of the students want cheaper prices.
Okay, well that's important to hear.
Yeah. I mean, most of the students, a great part of students are international, and even though, for example, I'm from Portugal, when I came here for the first time, I couldn't afford eating on campus. I always had to bring my food. That's why I was so relieved when they put the microwave in, even though it's only 2 microwaves now. But
I'm all for more microwaves.
Yeah,
yes.
Should be more as well to down the cost of food and drinks. But yeah, I hope the university really takes this on board, and for next year we won't have.
But Raquel, I think it is important to recognise we do subsidise catering on the campus. The university does not make money out of it. The current contract has a provision for the caterer to pay some money back to the university, but we put that directly back into the catering provision on the campus. If it was purely commercial, it would be more expensive.
Well, we don't want more expensive. One of the questions that has been going on, it's the VC pay.
Oh, yeah.
With the Vice-Chancellor constantly in the news lately, and the hot topic in the sector, how do you justify yourself and other VCs earning these astronomical salaries? And also another question, how is your pay set, and do you think there should be more transparency in the way in which it decided and it is communicated to students? This has been a lot going on, especially around students and around pages around the university.
Yeah, sure.
Student pages.
So Vice-Chancellor's pay, in my view, like everybody's pay, should be as transparent as possible, but Vice-Chancellors generally are well paid, and my own pay is about the middle of universities like Middlesex, so I'm more or less what they call the median level. I have no say over the setting of my pay. My pay is decided by an independent remuneration committee that makes these decisions in the light of what benchmarks they look at in terms of what other universities pay, etc. I was offered a pay rise this year by a remuneration committee. I turned it down. So I know times are tough, and I said I didn't want it. And I think there's right to be such a focus on Vice-Chancellor's pay. My own view is that the right way to deal with high salaries is to have a good progressive tax system. That's fair to everybody. I think what's been said by, for example, the Labour Party around saying they don't want to see a bigger gap than 1 to 20 between the lowest paid workers in an organisation and the highest paid are right, and my salary is within that range, and I would never accept a salary that went outside that range, but that's a personal position. But I think the important thing is that we show that whatever we earn, it's delivering value, and that we're accountable for what we're doing. And being a Vice-Chancellor is a wonderful job, not least because we're surrounded by such wonderful students, but it's quite a tough job too. I think the pay reflects that, but there is a lot of variation in the sector, and I think each individual's Vice-Chancellor's pay should be justified by the remuneration committees that set that pay. And of course the pay and any expenses, etc., are published. They're on the website, available to the whole country annually in our annual accounts, so it's completely transparent in that regard. Oh, I should say one thing as well, that our current chair of our board, Geraldine Proudler, is completely committed to decisions on my pay being a matter that's considered by the whole Board of Governors, and the Board of Governors, of course, includes the Student Union President.
So we had a couple of questions regarding the accessibility on campus. Some students stating that there's not enough work completed to ensure that students with disabilities can access campus. Can you respond to this issue, and how will you ensure campus accessibility is improved?
Yeah. So in terms of physical accessibility, we're constantly trying to improve that. I think it's a lot better than it was a couple of years ago. I remember talking to one of our students who was in a wheelchair a couple of years back, and he actually stopped me in the quad and said, "Look, Tim, I need to talk to you about what it's like to get around this campus on a wheelchair." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to make a time to walk round with you." And I spent a couple of hours with him going round, and it was an eye-opener for me. You know, the most minor changes in the gradient of a path that I never really noticed. I just, you know, blithely walked up that path. He was able to show me actually there was an issue about getting round that path. I had somebody from the States came round with me as well, and we just listed everything. It's like a snagging list, and all of that has been put right. So because I've made a point of following that up. But there's more we can do. The campus is a mixture of older and newer buildings, and that presents challenges. But in every case, we've tried to adapt our physical space to make it as accessible as possible. But there's still more work to do.
Do we have? Oh, okay, we have some. Another question is about halls. By the way, thank you, student who submitted the question. The other question about halls. So every year the price of halls goes up, but there are no renovations, and the students' experience always gets worse. Are you doing anything to improve the lives of students in halls, and can you make any admissions that university profits? Can you make any admissions that university profits from these surpluses?
Okay. Take that last point first. The university doesn't make any money out of halls, so no, we don't profit from providing accommodation. The only halls that we own directly, of course, are Ivy, and we have spent quite a lot of money renovating Ivy halls, and we try and keep the cost of the rooms in Ivy as low as possible to give students a choice of rates across the provision we have. Most of our halls are provided by a housing association, and that's a long-term contract that's been in place now for 10 years. We expect that provider to keep the halls maintained and up to scratch, and there's a constant dialogue about that. We also entered into contract to access more halls out in Wembley. We realise that's not as close as ideally it could be, but it's more halls. We contracted with Unite to provide those halls and underpin that contract to make sure however many students took those rooms, we would have enough available. And we've also got longer term plans to develop a student village much closer to the campus that in time will replace the Unite halls. But I realise that the cost of halls are significant in London. We do try to provide a range of prices, but we're not in total control of it because the only halls we provide directly are Ivy.
I think when students mention here on how to improve their life is, for example, Wembley, the Unite halls are in Wembley.
Yeah.
Most of the students, when they come, they say it's too far, and there's no direct transport. Last week, I went to Platt halls. Some students had their can of milk in the window because it was colder outside and they didn't have space in the fridge.
Okay.
They have 6 students and only 1 small fridge per flat. It's not enough. This is the kind of things that students are asking. If they are paying that price for halls, they should have these kind of things. This is only some of the things. Also, laundry in halls, they think they shouldn't pay for it because it should be already included. And also the printers in halls. This is some of the things that myself as a sabbatical officer keeps hearing from students over and over, and this is the thing. I don't have a question for, I don't have an answer for them. I don't know. Yeah.
So keep the pressure up. I mean, keep those discussions going. You know, it's all about negotiation and trying to improve things all the time. But again, the only point I can make is that nobody's making a profit out of this housing. Our provider is a housing association, a social housing provider, and the university doesn't make money out of halls. So it's all about working out, well, here's the income and what's the best way of using this income. So if fridges are the priority, then you know, something else will need to give to allow that to be paid for. But I think it's important to talk with the student union and our students to understand what the priorities should be.
I understand that logic, but it's just I don't think it's fair that a student should let something go that they actually need to get something that once again they need. I mean, having a fridge and having your food there shouldn't be letting something else go, but also should be a priority because they are paying to live there. And some of the students come away from their country. For example, me came away from Portugal. If I would be living in halls, my mom, my family would expect me to have all the conditions as I have at home, at least the basic ones. And one of the basics is a fridge.
Okay, I will take that message back.
Yeah. Okay. One more. Oh, should I go to? Yeah, it's only one left. So the last one is about timetabling. I was just going around, and one message that we are constantly hearing from students, but also staff, is a recurring issue of timetabling and room booking problems. How do you see the university getting to grips with the increasing need for allocated learning space, but also considering the needs for looking at the timetables of our parents, carers, and commuting students?
Sure. We kind of covered this earlier on, but so I won't take up time repeating it, but we know we're not getting timetabling totally right. We've made improvements each year, but we need to make a step change. We haven't made that step change, and that's why we are putting quite a bit of resource into bringing experts external to the university in to work with our timetabling and estates colleagues to get this right. And it's about taking into account all the different considerations, student needs and wants, staff availability, course design, and our space. And that's quite a puzzle to solve. And we haven't been able to solve it ourselves, and that's why we have brought in some really, really good external expertise to help us with it.
Mm-hmm. Just on the timetabling, some students come back and say, is the timetable going to be available earlier this year? I heard in some of the committee that this was going to be analysed. Do we now for students? Will students have their timetable earlier, or?
But the plan is to get it as early as possible. I certainly hope the timetable is available. I mean, ideally it would be available by July, but it will be available by September.
By September, okay. We can't make it earlier.
We will try to make it earlier than we do at the moment.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think this is it. Many thanks for joining us this afternoon, Tim. I hope that we can keep the conversation going as our organizations continue the good work on improving the student experience. Do we have any live questions and answers? I know, but do we have?
We'll submit them to.
Okay, so all the questions that weren't answered during the live, Professor Tim will answer them later. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Raquel.